We are all makers. As ham radio operators, when we are working on getting our license, we're learning all of the language. We're becoming literate in the world of ham radio. We're working towards the idea of being able to push the button on our microphone and to be able to talk on the air. As we get our license and we start acquiring gear, we start learning how to set that gear up, integrate it to make contacts and make communications across our communities and across the world. Eventually, we acquire enough gear that we have to start learning how to put together complex systems of gear in order to be able to meet the goals that we're trying to meet with communications. Then sometimes something happens in our time as being a ham radio operator that changes our mindset. For me, it was this day. The Buddy Hex arrived to me in the mail. I set it up, and when I got to looking at it closely, I realized that the entire thing had been 3D printed. This was an early prototype of the Buddy Hex that I was beta testing, and it had been designed on a computer by a ham, printed out by the hams, and then sent out to other hams to be able to test and operate. I was able to make contacts around the world with this. The light bulb at this point went on in my mind. I'm a ham. I can do this as well. I can create things as well. I just need to get the right tools to be able to do that. A lot of that comes out of your own imagination. So I started to begin to modify some of my own gear, much like a lot of hams do, and started to hack together various different projects from other parts that I had laying around the house, or as one of my colleagues likes to say, crap from my garage. We were able to put together a rotator to be able to rotate the hex, and it worked. It worked really well. But that was just the beginning. Now we want to start taking this world of being able to make and design and create content and do it in a way that really can take your content to the next level for what you're doing within ham radio. Hi, I'm Chris Mattia, Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. This is WaveTalkers Live, and this is part of our new Maker series that we're putting together. Today, we're going to be talking about Fusion 360 for ham radio operators. Now, I'm not an engineer. I don't work on Fusion 360 professionally. In fact, I've only been using it for a few weeks at this point. But what I wanted to do is give everybody an introduction for how you can start to take ideas that you have, design them and create them and refine them using some software tools that will really help you take your content to the next level. So I'm joined today by my two colleagues, David W0DHG and Dan NR6V. And let's dive into today's show. So we always like to start off the show with an update and a check-in. So if you have access to Winlink, go ahead and fire up your copy of Winlink, create a new message, open your templates, and you want to open up the Winlink check-in template. We'll walk through that process in just a second. Send a message to all three of us, W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical call sign, WaveTalkers. And down in the comments section of that form, let us know what is one ham radio project that you would love to create. Let's take a quick second and walk through that process of sending that message in. So what you're going to do, let me move myself down into the corner here, fire up your copy of Winlink, hit the little new message button here in the upper left-hand corner. Dave, you can go ahead and pull you guys off.
Yeah, working on it.
Thanks. You're going to come up here to the top and hit the select template button. You're going to go down to where it says standard templates, click the little plus next to that. You're going to come down to the general forms section, click general forms. Down near the bottom, you'll have Winlink checkin.txt. Just go ahead and give that a double click. It should open up your web browser of choice. There's a basic form for you to go ahead and fill out. All the information is pretty common here. Just make sure you click on this top date and time field because that's going to set the current date and time for when you're sending this, especially if you've previously saved this form. We did some episodes a while ago that walked you through that process. You're going to select, this is an exercise. You'll let us know which band you're sending this on and which mode. You'll fill out the rest of the information here at the top, and down near the bottom, here's that comment section. This is where you want to let us know what is one ham radio project that you would love to create. After you finish filling all of that out, go ahead and hit the submit button. I'm going to close this and minimize this real quick. It'll fill in the information here in the form, and then just go ahead and post that to the outbox, and then open the session and send the message. If you need help stepping through this process, then go back and check out episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the WaveTalkers live series, where we walk you through in great detail how to get yourself set up on Winlink. It looks like we've got a bunch of check-ins coming in. I'll go ahead and download those now, and later in the show, we'll come back to this and we'll see where everyone is around the world who has sent in some check-ins. But for now, let's go ahead and jump back over to the slides and continue on, because we have a lot of information to go through today with this Fusion 360. And so I want to get right into it today. Now, last week, if you watched our episode, we talked about the design process, and we were talking about building your own Go boxes. And this week, we're going to focus in on this bottom center option, which is develop models and solutions. That's what we're going to be working on today, is just really focusing on just this one particular aspect. And we mentioned last week, when you're getting started with modeling, there are a variety of different approaches that you can take. You can, of course, start off like most of us do, on the back of a napkin, a piece of paper, grab a marker, sketch out what your idea is, whatever it happens to be. In this case, I was laying out an idea for a Go box, and I literally just used a couple of markers and a piece of paper. It's a perfect way to get started. And for some projects, this may be all you need to be able to do. So don't think you have to go through all the different layers and layers of design in order to be able to do this. The next option would be to build some kind of a scale model. And a great way to accomplish this is to literally take your pieces of equipment, grab that old shipping cardboard box that just showed up at your door, open it up, put the piece of gear on it that you want to incorporate or sketch out some ideas, trace around it, and then cut it out. Now you have models that are the right size. You may need to modify your model so that you've got the body of a component. You may need the faceplate with both the depth of it as well as the look down on it. So you get a real sense as to the dimensions as you're trying to lay out an object. Again, this is super, super easy to be able to do, and it's something that probably all of us have done at one point or another. What we're going to dive in today is virtual 3D modeling, and we're going to use a tool called Fusion 360. Now, Fusion 360 is a professional engineering tool for building 3D models, and it does all kinds of fancy stuff that we're going to barely even scratch the surface on. We're going to just focus in on what hams need to know in order to be able to become a little bit proficient. And today our goal is to try and build 3 different models. The first model we're going to build is a battery. So if you're looking for different gear, you may be looking at a variety of the different batteries that are offered by a company. And you may be wondering to yourself, hey, will this particular battery fit in the box that I'm building, or is that battery going to fit? If you look on a lot of these pages from a lot of manufactured products, if we scroll down in the list, you'll oftentimes find a line that will have the dimensions of that product. And so here it is right here, 137 millimeters by 107 by 78 millimeters. Well, how big is that? How big is that in comparison to other things? You can of course take your ruler and get it out and kind of start measuring things. You can sketch it out on cardboard. That would help. But we're going to start with that model. Then we're going to go for our second project, and we're going to actually model one of my radios. We're going to model the body of the Kenwood D710G. And what I want you to get a sense of as we do that is the process of measuring different components on there, making a virtual model that shows exactly or roughly where the different components are. So if you go to spin it around in 3D space, you have a good sense as to where your connectors need to be, where the heat sink needs to be. Is the power cord going to line up with what you need? Those sorts of things. So we're not getting into crazy detail. Then for our third project that we're going to work on today, we're going to try and create from scratch. We're going to look at a couple of different products that are out there in the market right now. And I'll talk about the problems that I have with the versions that I've seen. And then we're going to design one. We're going to design a replacement from scratch inside of Fusion 360. And then we'll 3D print it out. So we have a model that will show us how to be able to do that. So with that, let me switch back over to slides one more time. If you want to get a copy of Fusion 360, open up your web browser of choice and fire up whatever search engine you like to use. Look for this particular term, Fusion 360, free for hobby and home use. If you search for that term, the first hit should bring you to a page where you can go online, you can download a free license and a free copy of Fusion 360. It's available for both Mac and Windows. There are other 3D CAD programs out there for other platforms as well. The concepts that we talk about today should work for most anything, although the details of how the different apps work is going to be different. But this will allow you to get a copy of Fusion 360, download it. The license for the free and hobby home use is free for 1 year. And then you simply go online after that year and you renew that license. So for hobby use, for ham use, as long as you're not doing commercial use, you're perfectly fine with that. I have gone and bought my own copy of it, but up until now, I've been just using the free version as I've been learning how to do all of this. So after you go through and install the app, it should look something like this. Now I'm going to be working on a Mac, but this works exactly the same on both Mac and Windows. The real biggest difference between the two versions of Fusion 360 is if you're on a Mac and you're using a keyboard command, you use the command key. If you're on a PC, Windows, then you just use the control key. And otherwise, the keyboard commands are all the same. And a lot of the keyboard commands do not have a modifier key at all. So it's just a pretty simple, straightforward thing for that. All right, so let's walk through a little bit of the interface. It's a little bit of an odd looking application. If you're not familiar with a 3D application, don't worry about it. We're going to walk you through the basics of doing this all on your own right now. So we start up here near the top of the application. This top toolbar is going to change depending on what you have selected. For the most part right now, we're in the 3D model view, which looks like this. It's got a lot of these blue icons. We're only going to work in one other mode, and that's going to be the sketch mode. We'll deal with that in just a second. If you look over here on the right-hand side, you have this weird little cube thing that's kind of floating here. If you move your mouse and you kind of click over the top of this, you'll see a little home icon. Anytime you click the home, it's going to reset your view back to this main home view. You can also click the sides of the cube. So in this case, I'll click the top, and you'll notice that I'm now looking straight down on top of my model. I can click the home again, and it spins me back to this nice little perspective view. Same thing for the front and the side view here. You're able to move that around. Now, in the upper left corner of your screen, you have this browser that's here. And anytime you start a new Fusion 360 project, when you first launch Fusion, it creates a new project for you. The very first thing that you always want to do is you want to just come up here to this top item. You want to right click on it and select new component. It's the very top item up here. If you go on and you watch any of the tutorials online about using Fusion 360, they talk about rule number 1, always start with a component. So you just right click, say new component, You're going to come over here and you're going to give it a name. And so I'm going to call this, we're going to make a 15, we're going to make a battery, and it's going to be a 15 amp hour battery. So I'm just going to type that in there and I'm going to hit OK. And all it's done is it's created this little component in here. Start off with just that. We're gonna have some additional items that will be here in this side, but we're not going to go into a lot of detail about what those are because it's not really necessary for getting started as a ham. Down here in the bottom, there are some additional controls for you. And I know these are a little bit hard to see. The very first one is a rotate item or an orbit item. So if you have a mouse that has a middle button on it, not the wheel, but a middle button, then you're able to just click on that middle button. And as you drag around, it will pan your object around. If you hold down the shift key while holding the middle button, it will allow you to spin that object around in all kind of weird ways. You can always come up and click the home and get back to the normal set. If you do not have a middle button, then you just need to come down and click on orbit and then click and drag around. Pan would be the hand, click and drag around. If you have a trackpad, like if you're working on a laptop, and you can set for, a lot of them you can set for a gesture of maybe 2 fingers on the trackpad, then you can use 2 fingers to pan around, hold down the shift key with 2 fingers, and that will allow you to rotate it. So that's how you work with the objects that are in here. So let's start off building out this battery. So if I quickly jump back over and we look again, we can see that this battery is 130, and we're going to work in millimeters. Why millimeters? Well, because I didn't like fractions when I was in school, and I don't want to mess with fractional inches or decimal inches or any of that stuff. You're welcome to do that if you would like. But working in millimeters, most of the models that you find online are all going to be in millimeters. So it's going to be easier to be able to do that. Oh, I should also mention that the other thing that you need, the only tool that you need for doing this is a simple ruler. Any ruler will do. That quick, cheap little plastic ruler, that'll work just fine. Just make sure you've got one that you can read the different units on nice and clearly. Do you need a fancy one of these things? No, you don't. You can do this with just a simple ruler. This is all I've used to build all the models that I've built thus far. And for taking measurements on existing things, literally just lay them down, put the ruler on top, and measure what it is. It's that simple. You're not having to do anything beyond that. Since I'm in the overhead cam, let me also talk a little bit about what this thing called a component is. So we're going to work within this project. And when I say project, I mean we're going to build a battery in one file. We're going to build a radio in another file. That's going to be our project. In the world of engineers, of building things within Fusion, you would start to think of individual components, like the top case of the KX3 here would be a component. The VFO knob would be a different component. This knob would be a different component. If you were to open it up and look, open it up and look inside, this circuit board would be a different component, and this board would be a different component. The back would be one, the top would be one. We're not going to get into that. We're not going to even mess with any of those things. We're going to do a very simple model of this. So don't get yourself too confused and too worried about some of that terminology. You can get more complicated if you need to, but you really don't have to. All right, so we're going to go back to, where'd it go? Oops, there's my walk up. Boop. That one. All right, so we have an object that is 137 by 107 millimeters by 78 millimeters. So let's go ahead and build that. All right, so I've got my Fusion project. The first thing you do, remember, is create your component. The second thing you do is you're going to create a sketch. You always start by creating a sketch of something, whether it be a sketch on paper or a sketch in 3D. And if you look up here in the toolbar, this very first icon up here is the Create Sketch icon. So you just go ahead and click on that, and you get this little origin thing that shows up here. And what the heck is all of that? Well, what we need to do is we need to tell the sketch, we need to tell Fusion 360 which axis we want to draw on. We want to draw just looking down on the top to be able to build this. So we're just going to click on this portion on the upper right. We're going to click on that, and notice it just spins around and drops us down. If you look at our little widget up here in the top, you can see we're looking at the top. You could have also clicked the top here and it would have spun us right down to this location. Okay, so we've got our sketch now. Now what we need to do is actually draw a box, because the battery is essentially a cube. So, or a cube. So you're going to come up here to the top, and notice our tools have now changed. These are now the sketch tools, and we're going to start with a rectangle tool. So we're just going to come up here, click on the rectangle. We're going to come down. The center point, if you remember back to grade school when you learned about XY coordinates, the center of that, the 0, 0 point that's right here, we're going to start drawing from there. So we're just going to click right at that point, and we're going to start to drag out. And you'll notice a couple of things. First of all, we get values that show up both at the top and on the left and on the right, or on the bottom and on the left-hand side. And it highlights for what size we've drawn. So you could try and draw out 137 here. Whoops. Let me undo that. I didn't mean to let go. Let me come back and start over again. Click and drag out. You could try and drag out until you got that bottom value to be 137, but you don't have to. You can see how it's highlighted already. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in 137, and it locks that in. And you can see right next to the value that I just typed in, a little lock icon appeared, meaning, hey, this is the value that he really wants. So now we want to jump over to the y-axis. I'm going to hit the tab key. So you just hit the tab. Notice it jumps over to that other axis. And now we type in the value for that dimension, which is 107. I just type in 107. It jumps up to that and it locks in. Now I'm just going to hit the return key or the enter key on my keyboard, and I now have my rectangle. I'm going to use the center mouse button to pan. If you don't have a center mouse button, just go ahead and grab the little hand, click and drag. And the wheel on my mouse allows me to zoom in and out. So we're able to kind of get a better view of what this box looks like. So this is the bottom of our battery. Well, now we want to add some depth to it. Right now we're working inside of our sketch. So we want to be finished with this. We want to extrude this up. And we're going to use a command. We're going to use the first keyboard command I want to teach you. And that is the push-pull command. And you enter push-pull by simply pressing the Q key on your keyboard, the letter Q. So I'm going to press Q. And now over here on the right, my little sidebar has changed, and it tells me I'm in the press-pull tool, and I need to make a selection. So I just click on the thing that I want to press and pull. Fusion selects that, and it creates a little place for me to enter in a value for that. If we go back and we look at what the depth of this battery is, it is 78 millimeters. So again, I just type in 78, and then hit enter on my keyboard. Now, it doesn't look like anything happened other than this is now gray. But if I hold this, if I'm going to orbit around, so if you don't have the 3 mouse button or the middle mouse button, click orbit. I'm going to hold down the shift key, click the middle mouse button, and I'm going to rotate, and we now have a cube that is exactly the right size for the battery. So this is the size of a 15 amp hour Bioenno battery. That's kind of cool. Let's go ahead and save this project. I'm just going to come up here. There's a little page icon. It looks just like the new mail message in Winlink. I'm going to click the little page icon, and I'm going to say save. You can also use Command or Control S to be able to save that. And I'm going to call this my battery _ 15 amp hour. And I'm going to just go ahead and save it in the default location and say save. Now, when you're working in Fusion 360, everything is stored up on their servers. There's nothing that's locally stored on your computer. It's all stored remotely up in the cloud, which is really nice because once you have Fusion set up and running, if you go to a different computer, you can just log into Fusion and you can get access to all of your files, which is really nice. Now, we think about this model could be finished at this point. We could just plop this into other things and have this to be able to work with. But I like to be able to look at this and go, hey, that's a battery. And I know most of my Bioenno batteries are all this kind of blue color. So let's go ahead and add a little color to it. So I'm going to come up here and go up to the modify. So you can see these tools are grouped. There's a create section and there's a modify section here. I'm going to click the little drop down here right under modify. And if we come down on the list, you'll see there is an option for appearance. And there's a little A next to it. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And it brings up this other little toolbar. Now, this has a lot of little different types of objects that you may want to have. How do you want to add some appearance changes to this? And if I come down a little bit, they'll see there's an option here for paint. I'm going to go ahead and click on the little folder for paint. And let's go ahead and open up the glossy paint folder. Stay clicking on it. Come on. Double click on it, it'll open. There you go. And here's a nice blue color. I don't care if this is the right blue or not. I'm just going to take that little blue ball. I'm going to drag it over. I'm going to drop it on the model. And now I have a blue box that is the exact right size for this particular battery. So if you think back to last week where we were talking about designing a Go box, will this particular battery fit inside of the box? You could very quickly build out a couple of different models for the different batteries you're considering and be able to drop them into your virtual Go box that you're building. And you can see, does it fit? Will it fit in this orientation? Will it fit in that orientation? And so forth. So there we are with that. I'm going to go head up and I'm going to go one more time. I'm going to go up to the file menu and save. And each time after the initial time you save, you get these little pop-ups that say version description. Okay, so it initially says user saved. That's fine. We'll go ahead and say, okay, now what that's doing, you come up to the top, you'll see this little, there's this little waffle menu. It's this little like grid of icons in the upper left. If I click on that, it brings up a little sidebar over here. And this shows you all of your different projects that you're currently working on, all of the different files that you've saved. And here is that battery, 15 amps. And if you look off to the right, there's a version number and there's a little drop down next to that. You can click on this and you can see each different version. It saves a full history as you are building your file. So if you realize you get into working on something, you realize, hey, yesterday I was working on this and it looked a lot better, you can actually go back and you can open up a previous version of that file and it'll work just fine for you. So that's how you build a basic project. Now we're going to take this to the next level, if you will. We're going to go through and we are going to model my Kenwood D710G. And if you look at the body of the box, it is basically a box that is right here. It's a little cube. I have what the dimensions are written down. You would normally just go through and just put your ruler on here and measure what that is. This is roughly 137 millimeters in that direction. It's roughly about 143 millimeters back to this point. And where I'm measuring here, I'm actually measuring right to the edge of the body. I'm not measuring these components at this point. We're going to actually model what these components are in just a second. If we rotate it up on its end, I can see that this vertically, this is roughly about 42 millimeters as well. So let's go ahead and build this out, and then we'll go through and we'll start modeling some of these other faces. Over on the one side, there's a place for me to connect up my my mic, and on the front, there's a place to connect up the head unit. And on the bottom, there's this fancy heat sink. I don't think we're going to do the heat sink, but we are going to do some of the different components back here. We'll do the side little notch here. We'll do the hole here, and we'll do the front and the whole body. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to switch back over to Fusion. I'm going to come up here, and now we're going to create another new project. We're going to do that by going up to the little page icon, click the little drop down, go to new design. Command or Control N would also work to be able to do that. And once again, we're taken right back to that same starting point. I'm going to get rid of the little sidebar over here. We'll do that by simply clicking that waffle menu here at the top, and that goes away just to save a little space, a little screen real estate, so it's a little bit easier for us to be able to see and focus on what we're building. Just as before, we're going to start off by creating a new component. I'm going to right click or control click on a Mac to this top item, and we're going to say new component. It's going to spring open this window. I'm going to change the name for that, and I'm going to name this D710G. And just
ladies and gentlemen, I think we lost Chris. Or is it me?
Sorry?
Do we? Oh, it was me. Never mind.
Still there? Okay.
Apparently. Sorry. Thought I lost you.
Yeah, well, no, you did. He froze up to me as well.
Oh, I froze a little bit. Yeah, my internet connection. We're having monsoons here in California. Okay, so I'm going to click on this upper right corner. So that's going to take us into the XY coordinate grid. Once again, we're going to create a box. We're going to use the rectangle tool. Come back down here to the origin. I'm going to click and drag away from the center origin. And I'm going to type in my first side. I'm going to make that side to be 137 millimeters. I'm going to hit the tab key, and that's going to take me over to my Y coordinates. I'm going to type in 143 to be able to make that 143. And then once again, hit the enter or return key on my keyboard, and that locks in my rectangle. I'm going to use the middle mouse button to click and drag and bring this back into view. And I have my scroll wheel so I can zoom in and out on that object. So we've got our base sketch now. Now let's add the depth that we need. So we have the body of our radio, and that radio is going to be 42 millimeters high. So once again, we're going to use that Q command, the Q key on our keyboard. Just press Q, and it's going to take us into the press pull. We once again select the sketch, and it asks us how big do we want this to be. We're going to type in 42, and we're going to hit enter or return. And now if I hold down shift and use the middle mouse button in orbit, this is the size of my Kenwood D710G. You can see down here in the lower left-hand corner, that's that origin point. If I zoom in a little bit, I'm just scrolling in on the zoom on the wheel. That little origin, that's where we started drawing from. So we are going to refer to this face right here as the front of the radio. And I'm going to hold down the shift key, use the middle mouse button, and drag around to the back. And this face here is going to be the back of the radio. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that and select it. All right, now we want to start laying out the components that are on the back. We've got our SO239 connection. We've got a fan back there. We've got all of those different components. So we want to start sketching those out. Well, the sketch, you can sketch on the surface of any other object. So we have this back face selected. I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to click on the sketch. And notice it just kind of snaps down in. I'll just click on the middle button in order to pan that over so it's centered again. And I'll zoom in just a little bit. This is a new sketch that's now on the back of the radio. Now, what am I talking about these sketches? If you look over in this components browser over here on the left, come down here to the bottom. Here's our D710G. This is the component that we're working in. And if we twirl this down, you can see that there are a couple of other items inside of this component. There's origins, there's bodies. So the radio is a body. This box that we have is a body. And then we have sketches. So if I twirl that down, you can see that there are two sketches currently. So I'm going to click on the first sketch, click on the name of it one more time, and I'm going to edit that, and I'm going to change this to the body of D710G. Hit return. I'm going to take the second sketch. I'm going to click on that name one time. Notice it highlights it. Click a second time, and I'm going to call this the back of my radio. So now we know that this sketch is for the back. Okay, if we look at the back of the radio, we can see that there is an SO239, there is a fan back here, and there are a couple of other ports in here. What I would do normally was I would go through with my ruler and I would just lay it on here and I would say, oh, okay, so I see that this SO239 is roughly about 15 millimeters in diameter. I know that this fan here is roughly about 40 millimeters and so forth. You just go through and measure what those different items are, and you're measuring the diameter. You don't have to get super detailed with this. Just model the things that you need to be able to have. So we're going to model this. We're going to model the SO239. We're going to model the fan. We're going to model these different ports on here, and then we'll model these little wings that stick up. So pretty simple to be able to do that. And I already have all of the measurements for all of these items already laid out. So we're here inside of Fusion. And what we're going to do is we're going to make an SO239 connection. We're going to come up here, and if we're going to sketch one of those out, the simple shape that looks closest to that is the circle. So I'm just going to click on the circle, and I'm going to come down here. And when you draw a circle inside of Fusion, you're going to start with the center of the circle and just click and start to drag out. Now you'll notice that once again, we get those values that start showing, and it's saying, hey, how big is this circle? Well, this circle needs to be 15 millimeters. So I just type in 15 and hit enter or return, and I have a circle. Is that placed in the right spot? I don't care right now. It's just got to be close enough. Next, I'm going to make a box. I'm going to come back to my rectangle tool, and I'm going to make a box because the next item is pretty much right next to it. I'm just going to click and drag a box next to it. It doesn't have to be super precise because once again, we get our values for us to type in. So this is going to be 40 millimeters. I'm going to type in 40. I'm going to hit the tab key. It'll jump over to my other axis. And once again, type in 40 and hit enter or return. And now I have a 40 by 40 millimeter box. Perfect. We're rocking through this. Now we need our two data ports up here. Those are both circular shaped. So we'll come up and grab our circle again. We're going to, once again, click, drag to create a circle. And these circles are going to be 10 millimeters in diameter. So I'm just going to type in 10, hit enter, and I'll just create another one of those. Grab the circle tool, click, drag, 10 for 10, hit enter. And let's go ahead and make the bottom two as well. Those are both 7 millimeters in diameter. I'm going to come back up, grab my circle tool one more time, click, drag, hit the 7, enter. I got a 7 millimeter circle. Come back one more time, circle, click, drag, 7, enter. All right, we've got all of the ports that we really need to have. We also want to have these two little wings that go on either side. And the one that's really important is this one over here. So we're going to come back up to the top. That's a rectangular shaped object. Now this time, I want this to be right off of the edge of the body of the radio. So I'm going to move the mouse right over to the edge. So I'm right on the edge of it. And then I'm going to click and I'm going to drag inward and down. And Fusion figures this out that says, hey, it's smart enough to know you probably are meaning to draw a rectangle that is aligned with the edge. That's pretty cool. So now I can look and see, right now I've got the width selected. And so I know this little widget is 6 millimeters. I'm going to type that in, hit the tab key. Now I'm on the vertical axis. I'm going to type in 22 for the 22 millimeters and hit enter or return. And now I have a box that is right here that is exactly the right size for that. All right, that's all I'm going to model at this point. Now let's go through and start extruding some of these. Let's make sure that they're in the right place. Nope, let's extrude them. We'll extrude them first. So the first thing we're going to do, we need to know that if we were to measure our SO239 and measure our fan, they stick out about 15 millimeters. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the Q key on our keyboard, same as we did before, and we'll start with the SO239. As I move the mouse over that object, you can see that it starts to highlight, and all I got to do is click. It selects it. It selects just that one object, and I know it needs to be 15 millimeters. Well, I know that my fan is also 15 millimeters. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come over here with that still selected, and I'm going to click on the fan also. Now I've got the circle for the SO239, and I've got the fan, both of which are selected. I'm going to type in 15 for 15 and hit enter or return. And now if I just hold down my shift key and my middle mouse button, I can see that I have that SO239 connector and I have that fan that's hanging off the back. Now, if you're modeling this, that might be all you need to know that, hey, I need to make sure I've got room for my connector, or I need to know that I've got room for my fan. It might be helpful to know that you have these other ports over here as well. To get these other ports, what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to our sketch. Here's the one that's the sketch for the back. Just right click on that and come down and say, edit sketch. It spins us right back into our sketch. I'm going to click the middle mouse button to click and drag over. Now we're going to extrude all of these ports on here. But if you look on the back of the radio, these ports do not stick out. They stick in. They go inside of the body of the radio. So let's go ahead and model that. And let's say we've measured these and we know that they stick in 3 millimeters or so. Okay, so we're going to come back over to our model here. We're just going to hit the Q key again. We're going to do the push-pull thing. I'm going to click on this first circle here. I'm going to click on the next circle, and then this circle, and then this circle. All right, so we have all of those selected. Now, one of the things we haven't been looking at is over here on the right, as soon as we hit that, that push-pull command, it brings up some control information for us over here on the left. If we wanted to make these go out, we would just type in the value like we've been doing before. And it tells us the distance here that we're entering. So anything we enter into this little field here is also being entered here in the distance section. And you can notice that there's this little tiny blue arrow. One thing that you could do is you could grab that blue arrow and you could actually just pull these objects straight out for some amount of distance. You can also push back in and notice how it turns red, meaning it's cutting into that object. And if you look closely, you can see that there is a negative value. So the value of positive means go out from the surface, and the value of negative goes into the surface. So we said this was going to be 3 millimeters. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this and type in -3 millimeters. Whoops. You got to make sure it's all right. And so notice right here, the distance, I can come up here and I can do -3. I haven't hit enter or return yet. Point. There we go. -3.0 millimeters. That should go into my object. I got to make sure I've only got one negative sign. There we go. Now we've 2 negatives make a positive. Perfect. And I also want to point out down here, there's some additional operations that you can do. So initially, when we created this SO239 and we created this one, what this drop-down field said was join. Fusion just figured out, hey, you're going to extrude something out. You want to join this onto the object that you already have. Now that we've said go into the body of the radio, Fusion is smart enough to say, hey, you want to cut this out. You want to make some kind of a hole in here. So we're just going to go ahead and let it do that. We're going to let it create a cut, and we're going to say, okay. And notice, doesn't look like anything has happened. You know, when we extruded these, suddenly I could rotate around. I could use the shift key and click the middle mouse button, and I could see that those objects had been created. But now, for some reason, they're not showing up. Well, that's where I need to draw your attention to one more bit of the interface, and that's down here in the lower left corner. This is called your timeline. And so we started off with our first sketch of the body of the D710. Then we extruded that body. We created the body of the radio. Then we created a sketch on the back. That's our back sketch. And then we did an extrude of the SO239 and the fan. And now this little playhead here is our timeline to show where we're at. So we can drag this little playhead back in time, and we can go back and see what this object looked like at this point. Or we can drag it forward in time, and we can go all the way to the very end. And there we go. Now our objects are being rendered. So if I hold down the Shift key and use my middle mouse button, we can see that we have those data ports that are showing up here. We have our SO239 and we have our fan. That might be all the modeling you need, because you got to kind of know where things are. But it would be nice if we had these a little more precisely placed. I think that would be kind of nice to be able to do. So let's go back to our sketch. We're going to go back to the back sketch, right click on it, come down here to edit sketch. Takes us right back into this location. Okay, time for our, actually, I'm gonna bring myself back on the screen. Time for our second keyboard command. The first one we learned was Q. That's for the push-pull. That allows us to push objects in, pull them out. It's kind of like a fancy extrude. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use our second keyboard command, which is D for dimension or delta. So I'm going to press watch my cursor here. Right now it is the little arrow. I'm going to press the D key on my keyboard. And now as I move, now as I move over different objects, I can get them to select. So with the D key clicked, I'm going to now click on the center, and I want to make sure that the center of this circle is 18 millimeters from this left edge. So I'll click on the center. I'm going to move over to this left edge. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to start moving back towards the middle. And you can see that there's this new line that's being drawn, and there's some value in there. I'm going to click on that, and now I'm going to type in the value that I want. I want this to be 18 millimeters. And boom, when I hit return, this circle is now exactly 18 millimeters from that edge. I also know, because I measured it, that the center of the circle is roughly 15 millimeters from the top edge. So my D is still selected. I'm just going to click on the center. I'm going to come up here to the top, click on there, start to drag back towards the middle. And I've got this value here. Click on it, and I'm going to type in 1.5 and watch the circle when I hit enter or return. 3, 2, 1, boom. It just moved that circle. So there's the SO239. It is now exactly placed in just the right spot on the back of the radio. So now if I was modeling this to be able to work, I'm going to come up here on the top, and I'm going to click Finish Sketch. And I can hold down Shift and my center mouse button. Now I know exactly where that SO239 connector needs to be if I need to run a cable somewhere inside of the box, and I know that it needs to be in that location. You can do that same process with rectangles and with circles. So I'm going to go back to the sketch. I'm going to right click on my sketch, edit sketch. And I know that this rectangle needs to only be 1 millimeter from the top. So I'm going to zoom in using my scroll wheel, hit the D key, click on the line, come up to the top, click on the next line, come back into the middle, click, and I'm going to type in 1. And that rectangle is now 1 millimeter from the top. I'll roll back out. How far should this rectangle be from the left edge? Well, it should be 30 millimeters. So we're just going to click on the left edge here. I'm going to go over to the left edge of the radio, click, come back towards it. I'll drag up here, type in 30, hit enter, return, and that rectangle is now 30 millimeters from that edge. So things are looking pretty good. We've got our, and not only did it move the sketch, but if we go back and we finish the sketch and we look at it in the real world, we can see that those objects have physically been moved into the correct position. So you would do the exact same thing with these objects here using the center. In fact, let's do these top two right here. So once again, go back and edit the sketch. And I'm going to use the middle mouse button to drag over. Now for these, I measured these from the right-hand edge. So I'm going to hit the D key to get the dimensions, go to the center, come over to this right edge, click on it, come back up, click. I know that one needs to be 20 millimeters. I'll type in 20, hit enter, moves that circle over. Now, instead of measuring, oh, I guess I did measure this one all the way over to the edge. So now the next one is going to be 35. So I'll click on the center, come all the way over to the right edge, click, come back towards the middle, go up. This one needs to be 35 millimeters. And both of these are now 10 millimeters from the top edge down. So we'll just grab the center, come up to the top, come back down. I'm actually going to drag it up here so you can see it. That should be 10 millimeters. Moves that down. And notice that this circle is now black while this circle is blue. That means this circle is fully defined. It's fully locked in. So I'm going to grab this center. I'm going to come up to the top edge, come back down. I'll drag it up here so we can type, so we can see it. 10, enter. These two ports are in exactly the same location. Now let's say we want to make these two, instead of measuring them over to the edge, we want to measure two objects from each other. No problem. Come over here, click on the center of this circle, come over this one, click on the center of this one, drag back between the two. I'll do it down here so you can see it. Click. Let's say that these two circles are only 15 millimeters apart. So I'll type in 15. And now Fusion will make it so that these two circles are 15 millimeters apart. Then if you want to make the one so that it's in the right distance, I'll go from this center to this edge and back, and that's 20 millimeters. So there we go. Now those circles are all kind of locked in, and we would define the bottom so that those are all working correctly as well. Okay, I want to do one more here, and I want to extrude this object right here, but I want to do this a little bit different. I'm going to, once again, press the Q key on the keyboard so we can extract this. I'm going to come over and I'm going to click on this little tab. I'm going to click on that one time. I know that this little tab is also 15 millimeters that extrudes out, but instead of just hitting return and using this join function, I'm going to click the drop down here. I'm going to come over and we're going to create this as a new body because we're going to do something special to this one here in just a second. If we look at the actual unit, there's a hole that's right here. So we're going to put that hole all the way through this little tab. This is a little security hole, so you could actually lock this unit in place. I'm going to go back up here. Let's go back over on this side, and we're going to say it's a new body, and we're going to hit OK. There we go. So we have that. Once again, I've got to pull myself out. Here's our timeline. I'll just drag over on the timeline over one time, and there is that object. All right, great. We're looking good here. We have the back of our radio that's modeled up. It's looking pretty good. So let's go over to this side of our radio, and we would model in that hole the same way that we did these two holes here using the negative value. The only other thing that I want to do actually right now is I want to put that hole all the way through this. So I'm going to select this face. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to add this face to it. So now I've got two faces selected, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a new sketch and just pan over to this portion of the sketch, which is just this little tab that's sticking out right here. We're going to model using a rectangle, and we're going to put just a rectangular hole in that object. And if I can figure out where's my right notes here, that is a hole that's 5 millimeters by 10 millimeters. It's a rectangle. So I'm just going to click and drag to create the little hole. I'm going to type in 5, hit the tab key, and 10 in order to create that. You would dimension this the same way that we did the others, using it to lock in the right size. but we don't really need to do that to create the whole. What we're going to do now is we're going to use that same Q key. Notice we're just still using the same tricks here. We're going to use the Q key. We're going to select that rectangle that we just created, and we know we want to go negative. We want to create a hole. We want to go into this object. But instead of over on the control window here, it's telling us the direction for one side. We're going to click that drop down, and we're going to come down and, oops, wait a minute, not to mention, extend type. Instead of distance, we're going to come down and say to object, because if we change the thickness of anything, we want the computer to just take care of that model. So now it's asking, Fusion is asking us, where do we want to cut this hole to? So I'm going to hold down, I'm going to rotate my model around. I'm going to hold down Shift and drag around until I can see the back side of this. And here's the back of that little tab. I'm just going to click on that back tab, and notice now my hole has been cut exactly to the thickness of what that object is. I'll say okay. And now I have a hole that is right there in that back object. So that's how you extrude, create a body, create the body of something that you want to model, extrude something out, punch a hole into it as far as carving a little section out. You can punch a hole by going from one side of a model to come up to some other surface. And you can use the dimension key in order to lock in any dimensions that you want on your radio. You would continue now just working around the face of this, the body of this radio, editing the sketches, creating the hole that's here for the microphone port. You would come around and create a sketch here on the front face of this, creating a hole for where the head connects in here. You could even come down here on the bottom of the radio and model out those little grooves that are for the heat sink. So that should give you enough to be able to get started doing a basic model. Now, is this perfect? No, not by any means. But what it does do is it allows you to now combine some of these tools together. So let me save this real quick. I'm just going to hit Save, Command or Control S, and we're going to name this the radio. I'm going to call it the D710G, and I'm just going to hit Save. So how does all of this kind of work together? Well, if I come up here to create a new project, a new design, just like we did before, and we hit our little waffle menu up here, we can see here's the battery we just created, and our D710G is this one right here. So we have a brand new project open. That's this blank canvas here. Let's say we want to bring in the battery. Well, we can come over here to the left. We can right click on our battery and say insert into current design. Oh, hold on. I got to save it. Let me do save. Take the current design, save it. We're going to call this our new Go box. There we go. Now that it's saved, now I can come over here. I can right click on the battery we just created, insert into current design. We get a little spinny, spinny, spinny. And there's our object. We can then push it around so that the battery is where we want it in this new design. We can also now come over to our D710 we just created, right click on it, insert into current design. Spin, spin, spin. This is now in here as well. And I can grab this arrow, move it over. Let's zoom out just a little bit. Hold down the shift. So now we have the size of what that battery is next to our radio. So pretty quickly, you can get in and you can start to do some basic manipulation. I'd enter a return to lock that in. You can do some basic manipulation to now recombine these different files or different projects that you have. All right. Now I want to switch gears because I want to take all of this that we've been doing and I want to apply it briefly to a project that I've had in mind for a while. So about line winders. So here's a line winder that I got. This is one made by Buddy Pole, and I've got the wire that's wrapped around it. You can see how I wrap this wire here. I wrap it in a figure 8 pattern, so when I pull the wire off, it doesn't have all of the kinks and twists in it. So what I like about this winder is it's got these really deep cuts in the top and the bottom, so the wire stays on the winder really well. But it also, I like having the handle on here because it gives me a place to hold on to while I'm working with the wire, while I'm working with the line that's here. It has this horn on here, which is really nice for being able to wrap the edge of the wire around. If you're using this as a counterpoise wire, you can shorten the counterpoise wire really nicely. That works really well. However, when you're winding it in this figure 8 pattern, this horn always gets in the way, and it really drives me absolutely crazy. So like any good ham, I just modified one of mine. I grabbed a hot knife and I literally just cut the horn off. And this works a lot better for me. I'm able to just wrap the wire onto here. It works really nicely. I'm actually pretty pleased with the way that this operates. However, there's a lot of times when having this horn is really helpful for to be able to shorten that counterpoise wire. The other problem that I don't really like about this particular winder is when you go to get your wire started on it, you got to hold on to the wire, or you've got to thread your wire through these different holes in order to hold it in place so you can get the start of winding that line onto your winder. I'm really not a fan of that. This is a winder that's made by Chameleon. Let me move the cardboard out of the way. So the Chameleon winders, the thing that I do like about them is they've got this really nice cord that wraps around to hold your wire in place. Super nice to be able to do that. However, the things that I don't like about this notch is really shallow, and anytime I go to wind on wire on here, the wire starts to build up and it pulls around, and then I'm stuck like trying to grab hold of the stupid thing and hold on to it so I can wind it up. It also doesn't have a good place for me to hold on to and start winding the wire on. I got to do the whole like thread it through the hole and pull it tight. That's not, to me, a very good design for this. And the other thing that is a little annoying to me is they've got this brilliant cord that works really well to be able to hold your wire on, but they only put one notch. So what happens if I get the wire on here and I find I got it wrapped up and I need to notch it over here? How hard would it be to put a notch down at both places? Like, that would be pretty easy. All right, so here's the solution to this. What we're going to do is we're just going to design our own, and we're just going to design one completely from scratch. We're going to design our own line winder that works to our specifications. And we're going to use all the tools that I just showed you, and I'm going to throw in a couple of little bonus tools in this as I build this out. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a new design. And once again, I'm going to start off by creating a new component. I'm going to call it the wave. Whoops. Oh, you got to be really careful when you're typing on this, because it really does. Actually, I'm just going to close that and I'm going to create a new one because I don't know which mode I've gotten myself into. So come on, close. Yeah, don't save. Just create a new document. New document, right click, new component. I'm going to name the component my WaveTalkers line winder. I'm going to hit OK. So I've got my component, pretty straightforward. We're going to start off, we're going to make a sketch, and I'm going to grab my XY axis just like we did before. We're going to start off with a really simple rectangle. So I'm going to click the rectangle. I'm going to come down to the origin, click and drag out. What size should this be? I don't really know, because I'm just kind of like thinking through this in my head. Let's make it 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters. So I'm going to type in 50, hit the tab key, 50 again. I've got my 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter rectangle. I'm going to come over just like we did before. I'm going to hit the Q key and I'm going to select that. So we're going to extrude this up. Let's make this, I don't know, 5 millimeters thick. We'll type in 5, hit enter, return, and we have our little tiny rectangle here. Perfect, wonderful. Click the little twirly down, drop down thing. We're going to come back up to our sketches, click that, and right click, edit sketch. All right, we're back inside of our sketch. So one of the things that I said I really liked about the buddy pole one was that really deep notch at the top. So let's model that. We're going to take a circle. We're going to grab the circle tool. We're going to come right up here to the center. Now notice as I move along the center, I get a little X. So it says I'm on that center line, and I move it right to the middle and it snaps in place. So that tells me I'm in the center point of that. I'm going to drag out, and let's make this, I don't know, 25 millimeters. I'm just typing 25, hit enter, return, and I have that in there. Great, wonderful. Let's go ahead and make that now a hole in the initial sketch. So how the heck do I do that? Well, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to go finish the sketch. I'm going to come down in my timeline. If I take myself off, here's that extrude that we just did. If I right click on that extrude, I can say edit feature. And I go right in here. I can see that little circle. I'm going to click on that so it deselects the circle. So that first extrude is now not going to extrude the circle. And I just go ahead and click OK. Look at that. That's kind of cool. So now I have a little tiny notch that's cut in the top of my extrude. But this is kind of a weird little widget. I really need to have the bottom of this down here. So what I would like to do, instead of having to draw the top and the bottom, I'm going to let Fusion do the work for me. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on the create option here in the 3D sketch. And I'm going to go down to mirror. There's this new mirror command. Here's one of the new things that we're going to do. And so now what it's saying is, what object would you like to mirror over on the side? So I'm going to say, I want to mirror this object. And now it's saying, what's the mirror plane that you want to do? So I'm going to click on mirror plane. That is, hold down, shift, drag up. That is this plane right here. It's this bottom edge. So watch this. I click on that and it grabs whatever I drew on the top and just flips it over for me. Perfect. And the operation is a join. So there we go. Now I have the top of my winder, but it would be nice to have a place for all my wire to go. So I want to cut this section out right here. So let's go back over to our sketch. We're going to right click on it. We're going to edit the sketch. And we've been using these standard tools of rectangle and circle, but the next tool over here is the fit point spline, whatever that is. It's a curvy line. So we'll click the curvy line tool. We're going to come down here. We'll say maybe about right here on this bottom one. We're going to click. We're going to add a point. We're going to come up here. We're going to click. And we'll come up to the top and we'll click again. Now to finish this off, I'm going to click on this little circle with a check on it. Boom, that creates this little swoopy curvy line thing. I can now grab those little handles. Oops. Hit the escape key so I get out of that tool. Grab these little curvy handles and I can click and drag out to make this curve look more like I want it to look. And this could take a lot of finessing to get it exactly right, but we'll go with that for right now. All right, let's finish the sketch. We're going to come back to our timeline and we're going to grab that extrude. We're going to right click on it, edit the feature, and we'll just click on this new little bit that we cut out. And when I click on that, it deselects it. And we'll say okay. And look at that. Now we have a little swoopy cutout here for that whole area of our winder. Perfect. All right, let's go through and let's add the hole and the notch for being able to add the fancy little chameleon strap thing that they came up with. Love that. So we're going to go back. We're going to edit our sketch. We're going to say edit sketch. We'll just make a little circle hole. Maybe how about right here? We'll click, drag. Let's make that, I don't know, 3 millimeters. You could play around with this, find the right size hole for what's going to work. Okay, I got that. And now I need a little notch. Well, we already know how to make a notch. We'll use the rectangle tool and we'll click and drag a little rectangle. We're going to make that, I don't know. Let's make it 3 millimeters in by 5 millimeters. So we're going to say 5 millimeters in and 3 millimeters high. And we'll just say enter return. Great. So we've got a little notch here that's cut out. That's going to work pretty well. Now, one of the things that I really didn't like about either of these two designs is that there was nowhere for me to get my line started. I didn't have a place where I could simply just hook the line on and pull it out. So I want to create that. That's going to be a brand new thing. So we're gonna design that from scratch. We're going to use a rectangle here. We're going to come down to the bottom, just click and drag a little box out. Let's make this, I don't know, 20. Let's make it 20 by 20. 20, hit the tab key, type in 20 again, hit enter or return. We've got another rectangle. And then let's just put a little post right here in the middle. So we'll use another rectangle for that. Again, down on the bottom, click up and about like that shape. And we'll make that maybe 10 millimeters wide and maybe about 5 millimeters. Whoops. 10 by 5. Oops, I didn't get it in there. Escape. 10. Hit the tab key. 5. There we go. It's locked in. Hit enter return. And so I've got a little inset here. And since this is, let's use the dimension tool, the D, and we'll just make sure that we've got that and that dimension set to maybe 5 millimeters. So it kind of centers that little notch that's in there. Okay, so that's all pretty good. Now we need to do 2 different extrudes. We need to get this circle so that the circle and the little notch appears on both the top and the bottom of the mirror. And we need to make it so that this hole is only here in the top portion. All right, so let's finish the sketch. Let's do this hole first since we're in here. So we're gonna hit the Q key to do an extrude. I'm gonna click on this body, right? Come on, let me get it. It's not gonna let me. Cancel. We'll do the other sketch first. We'll come back over to our original extrude. We'll right click and let's just escape a few times. Right click. Come on. Oh, I got to finish the sketch. There we go. Right click. Edit feature. We'll click that notch. We'll click that circle. We'll say okay. And now we have our hole and our notch on the top and the bottom. That's looking really good. Now we got to get this other hole cut in there. So we'll go back to our sketch, right click, edit sketch, hit the Q key, and we're going to select that notch, which should get us. Sometimes you'll get this where you have a hard time getting a selection. So one of the features we haven't shown you is to turn off a body. We'll turn that down and we'll get rid of the 3D body, and that allows us sometimes to be able to select that sketch. Select face. Now let's go up here. Change the selection object to focus on a, should focus on a face. Should allow me to focus on right there. Let's try grabbing. Oh, no, that one. This one here. Try grabbing the edges. Huh, it's not letting me do it. Let's try the offset tool, the extrude tool. Nope. All right, well, sometimes Fusion gets into these weird things. What we're trying to do is just select that one object without getting that to extrude. But you get the idea as to where we're trying to get to with this. To finish this up, let's add a little bit of smoothness to the edges here on this. I'm going to turn the body back on. Oops, turn the body. Oh, there we go. Now is it going to let me select that? No. There we go, finally. Now I've got that selected. And we want to do, instead of distance, we want to do to object. Now we want to turn the body back on, flip it around to the back to select the back of the object. So that should cut a hole all the way through it. selected. Nope, it's not letting me. Cheat, and we'll just do -5. There we go. All right, it's not letting me. So we'll skip that portion of it for now, but you get the idea as to what we're doing here with that. Now to finish this off, what I would do is save the file, and I'm going to call it my line winder. And directly from Fusion, if you've got a 3D printer, you can come up here to the top and you can go, there's a 3D print option, and you can export out the information. If you've got a 3D printer that works with Fusion, you can select that 3D printer and you can print directly from here. You can also go up to the file menu and go down and export. And when you click the drop down menu here, one of the options that you can export is an STL file, and that STL file will work on most 3D printers. You would then just take that STL file and export it out to your 3D printer. And what you would end up with is this. You end up with a 3D version of your line winder. Now, why would I make this so tiny? Well, when we were just first modeling this, we weren't exactly sure of the sizes that we wanted to have. Since I've modeled this inside of Fusion, I could come back and I could expand each of those initial sides and stretch this out to the ultimate size that I wanted for the particular project that I was working on. But now I have a line winder that I can use a loop to get started with, and have the openness to be able to do the figure 8 pattern that I like to do. I can put a little elastic on here and wrap it around. I've got a notch at both the top and the bottom to be able to lock that off. So very quickly, you're able to take some idea, some concept that you have, and use tools like Fusion 360 or many other 360 tools in order to bring your ideas into the real world with a lot more precision. And with
Chris,
that,
just a question. What was the time it took you to print that, and if you've got an idea of cost?
yeah, sure. So it took on my printer, it took about 50 minutes to print this out, and cost wise, it cost about 27 cents worth of material, not counting the printer or anything else. But and you can do this on any 3D printer. You don't have to have a super fancy 3D printer. The ones that you can pick up on Amazon for $300 would be able to do this. This is just printed in PLA plastic, so pretty much any 3D printer would be able to do this. You don't need any like high temperature or anything fancy. And then to finish it, I literally just took and sanded the edges around and just kind of like take the sharp edges off of it. And it came out pretty nice to be able to check and see how is this what I want to be able to do. I could then stretch it out to a larger size if I wanted to. So there's my, from the different versions that I saw, different line winders that I've been working with, to some concept of my own of what I was looking for to be able to create something. Is this the ultimate line winder? No, but I literally created this last night, printed it out last night, and the whole project from initial design all the way to having the printed part in my hand took me about an hour and a half, including the time to print it. So with that, let's go ahead and quickly jump over to check our check-ins real quick. I'll bring myself back onto screen. I'm going to bring back up Winlink here, do a quick check of the check-ins, and so we can see where folks are in. And yeah, we've got a lot of check-ins that have come in here, and we'll go ahead and download those. If you haven't sent in your Winlink check-in, go ahead and do that real quick. I'll do one more quick check of this, and we'll bring it up on the map. That is that's there for us. And this is just the start of being able to get and do this. Just a reminder, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a professional at using Fusion. I'm sure there's a ton of better ways or more intricate ways that these could be done. But this hopefully is something that's achievable for pretty much anyone to get in, and even just getting started. We just looked at a couple of simple commands to be able to do. I'd suggest if you want to go back, go to our YouTube channel. If you found this helpful, like the video certainly, and subscribe to the channel. And then watch this video, watch this episode again, so you can go through in detail. You can watch it, pause, and kind of work through with me as I'm calling out each of the steps, so you can get a better feel for how to be able to create and build some of these. So I'll do one more quick check here, make sure that we've gotten all the check-ins. It looks like we've gotten them all in at this point. I'm going to come up and bring up the map icon. Click on the map icon. We're going to look at the Winlink check-ins. We'll display the map, and we're going to look at the check-ins in our filter that have come in the last 24 hours. We'll say save. I'm going to blow that out to full screen. Here's a couple of the check-ins that have come in here in Southern California. We'll start off there. I saw Logan and Craig and a few of our friends out here in the Vegas area. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit. We can see a few more of them coming in here. We'll zoom out a little bit further. There's most of North America that we're able to see at this point. We're able to see a couple of the check-ins that are up here in the Pacific Northwest. Up there in Montana, we've got a new user, K7ULM. Thanks for joining us from the Montana area. That's great. Idaho and Utah. We've got stations here in Colorado. Several stations here. There's King over there in Texas, and KC5NGX, and looks like John down there in down near Houston. Some folks in South Carolina. There's Lloyd, and looks like Rory joining us there in Virginia. A few folks in New York and Indiana, Michigan, Iowa. There's our friend up in the north, a VE3 YX. Hey, thanks for joining us. Let me go ahead and zoom all the way out till we get a global perspective on the map. I'll right click and drag. Looks like we've got Roland in Germany, Franz over there in Austria. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us over there as well. Operators here in the Philippines, Delta Uniform 3, Golf Kilo Tango. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us there in the Philippines. And of course, Terry down there in ZL land. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us down there as well. Let me bring myself back up, and we'll change back into the booth, and we'll bring the guys back up onto to screen to be able to do our little final wrap up. David, any kind of closing thoughts for today? I know this was a lot of information we just threw out at people. We want to kind of give a quick walkthrough of this information, but what are your thoughts today?
I mean, I think it's a great opportunity to take a confined amount of space and see, does it fit this way? Does it fit that way? I think we still have a ways to go, and we'll have some more episodes about, once you get the boxes in there, then you got cable routing, and you got, cooling, and a lot of other things that you need to consider. But I think it's a good start, and I think we're teaching people good skills.
Excellent. Thanks. Dan, what kind of thoughts have you got?
It helped me to understand 360. I've played with it a little bit, but not very much, and laid out the basic steps. I was trying to follow along on another computer, and I had one screen that didn't match yours, and I could not figure out how to get back to where you were. So I stopped trying to follow along, and actually I found I understood it better by watching you than I did by actually trying it. And of course, I've got the video I can always go back to, and probably will go back to and play with it. But yeah, again, I think we mentioned this last week, but you don't have to have a 3D printer. Lots of libraries have them. There are maker spaces in lots of cities. So you may, or another ham in your club may have it. And so there's so much you can do with this, and I think I'm going to make a winder because I'm not happy with any of the ones I've found either.
It's been amazing to me as I've worked with a bunch of different ones. I've been flying kites for a lot of years, and I really haven't found one that really kind of hits the mark for me for what I'm doing. And this is definitely not. This is definitely not there yet. There's a long way to go with it. But I was really excited last night to take something from a complete concept that I had in my mind, be able to use some very simple, easy to use, or relatively easy to use. I'm only a couple of weeks into using Fusion at this point. But then to be able to get to the point where I've been able to print something out that completely came out of my own mind and started to be able to create that. I'm hoping that we're gonna see some more things coming out of our users that are doing this. I know you've been working with 3D printers for a while. A lot of people who first start getting into this start using things out of Thingiverse, more stuff that other people have designed, and hopefully this starts to open the doors for folks to start creating on your own. That I think is one of the big things to be able to do. So
David, WB6TOU asked a great question. Is there like a common library of fittings or connectors or coax or any of that? Is there something
that is a great question. I am working myself on trying to build some of those. We're going to put some up on WaveTalkers. I'll put some up on Thingiverse. Inside of Fusion, I don't want to go too deep into a sidebar here with this, but if I do jump back into Fusion real quick, if you're in the 3D views, let me finish this sketch. In the upper right corner, there's this option here for insert. And if you click that insert option, you can insert a variety of different things, including SVG files. So if you find something on Thingiverse, like one of the things that I found on Thingiverse is somebody had modeled out a little port to be able to be able to do power pole connectors. So instead of buying the one that's $30 or something like that, because I got a 3D printer now, I could print that port out. So I could just import that SVG file directly from Thingiverse and like place it to where I want it. There's also an option here for insert McMaster car component. What the heck is that? If I click on that, it brings up the entire McMaster car resource, so I could go in and find a particular screw I'm looking for, or a particular bolt, or some different component. And when you drill down in through here, you can actually find, in here you're looking for the step files. You grab that step file and import it in, and you can do that. You can also go look on some manufacturers' websites. Some of them are providing 3D models. One of the things that I've been working on the side, I've been building, here is the Chameleon tactical dipole. And I found the box that on the manufacturer's website. I was able to go in and grab that. I found an SO239 connector on a different site. So you just got to go in and kind of search around. Some things some models you'll have to pay for. Most of those I just skip right over and I just go look for something free to be able to do. But I've been able to model this out. I did this model yesterday of the little components, so I'm able to work with this. But each of the little nuts and bolts and screws and all of that, all those came directly from McMaster-Carr to be able to put those in here. And there's lots of sites that you can get on there. I think some people are putting some other links to some other places in the chat as well. So yeah, lots of options for you and different things like that. Let's see. If you found this information helpful, be sure to go onto our YouTube channel, like the video, subscribe if you're not already. Watch the video again if you find this really helpful. Consider going on to wavetalkers.com. Use that buy us a coffee link to help support us and keep the show running, keep the infrastructure up that we need to be able to keep everything going with this. And with that, if you are here inside of the Zoom, hang around for the after party. We're going to open up the mics and have take some questions. If you'd like to join us inside of the Zoom, just go ahead and go on to wavetalkers.com. Down at the bottom of every page is a join us link. You can sign up for our mailing list, and we send out one email every week with the new link to the Zoom session, so you're able to join us and get in on it that way, and hang around for the after party. So until next week, we would like to say 7-3 to everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
7-3 all.
7-3.